Good evening and welcome to Overtime here on WOTM. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by our expert historian / researcher. He'll also do some high school football this year, Mark Everett Kelly. I tell you what, this is now game week in high school football. It's a really fun time. We've been talking about the high school and college and NFL football seasons. We're getting a little glimpse of the NFL with preseason work. We'll talk about some rookie quarterbacks a little bit later in our program. We get more and more anticipation as college football builds with the media days and whatnot. But right now it's time to focus on the high schoolers where it's game week, and I know a lot of people are excited all around the state.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for me to see how people get excited about high school sports down here. Now, for me, this is something real new. Because I'm not used to a high school environment being like this. So when we went to the game the other day over in Oxford, I was a little uncomfortable, not because I wasn't familiar with football. You know, all that stuff followed my whole life. And I've been in, to Super Bowls, I've been to NBA Finals, I've been to World Series. So all that stuff, I've seen and done. But being in an environment where you have high school kids running around and the coaches are the stars and everybody treats it like all these guys are so important. For me, at that small of a community level, was really nice to see. But I was uncomfortable because I'm like, man, I don't know anybody around here. Like certain guys I know, I can look up stats. I go, oh, he did this in this game. But having to get to learn all that, it's going to be fun for me. And I think it's an experience which I'm going to enjoy.
Exactly. We'll get our first taste of high school football coming up this week. Live right here on WOTM, we will have both games in the AHSAA Kickoff Classic, the Crampton Bowl over in Montgomery. Let's take a look at those matchups once again. One game is a regular season game. The other game is an exhibition / jamboree game. Guntersville out of Class 5A will take on Handley, the defending state champion in Class 4A. That game is Thursday at 7 o'clock right here on WOTM. The very next night on Friday, it is Dothan and Bob Jones. Both teams compete in Class 7A, but it's a jamboree / exhibition game. It is the AHSAA Kickoff Classic game over at Crampton Bowl in Montgomery. We'll keep reminding you of that throughout the course of this week. But now let's turn our attention over to the college ranks. Once again, college football just getting more and more excitement and anticipation leading up to it. We saw the coaches poll a couple of weeks ago. The AP poll is out today. Not a lot of surprise at the top that Alabama is the #1 team going into the year once again. It is overall, once again, another really strong class for the Crimson Tide. It's another #1 class for the fourth time in the past 6 seasons for this Alabama football team. We'll see the overall voting in a bit, but what do you think about this Tide team once again kind of going in with more heightened expectations as a #1 team in the AP poll?
Well, everybody expected Alabama to be #1. This isn't a surprise. The usual suspects are up there in the top 5. I think Oklahoma is the key to the Big 12 right now. I mean, they're still part of the Big 12 as far as we know, and even though they're probably SEC bound, they represent the Big 12 now, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But they are still going to be a team to be reckoned with this year. Ohio State is always going to be a tough team. The only question with Ohio State is can they beat a big-time team from the SEC when the money's on the line? They did once. I mean, they beat Alabama in the Cotton Bowl back in 2014 season. So you know they can do it. It's just a matter of getting that consistency where they see something a little bit different in the SEC than they do in the Big Ten, which they've totally dominated. It's kind of boring for them in the Big Ten. No one really challenges them consistently anymore. Certainly Michigan does it, and that was probably their biggest worry. Clemson basically gets an escort to the college football playoff. Now with more expanded teams, they might have a little more of a challenge having to play teams from other conferences that are good and better than the ACC teams that they're beating up on every year. Georgia, I think, is going to be a stud. They're going to be the kings of the East. I think Florida's going to be good, but not as good as Georgia, who has experience. They have guys that have been waiting for this time. I think a lot of their fans are saying, okay, enough. We've seen getting to the SEC championship game and losing. We've seen losing to Florida last year, which I don't think too many did. But quarterback situation, which was unstable. Now it's stable. You know JT Daniels is going to be there. You know they're going to have a very good offense. You know they're going to be a good defense. And if they don't win the East, that's good. Somebody's going to get fired. Let's just put it that way. Then you have a team like Iowa State, which for once, they are going to be the hunted. Can they handle that? I think that's the biggest thing for Ohio State. You know they got good players, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy at quarterback. They've achieved last year when no one thought they would. Now they're going to have a target. Can they sustain that? And then you have Oregon, that kind of like the class of the Pac-12, which has been ignored. They've been absolutely ignored these last couple of years. For someone who's At one time, Oregon was considered the Alabama of the West, and I don't know if you can say that. They have a very good defensive player in Kayvon Thibodeau, one of the best in the nation. If they were able to sustain defensively, you know they have like a million weapons on offense because they're like a video game on offense. So I think they'll do well in the Pac-12. Are they good enough to make noise in the playoff? That's the only thing that's going to matter.
Exactly. And you see the rest of the top 25 there. Anything stick out overall? I think the one that always stuck out to me between the coaches poll and now the media poll is where LSU is positioned. I think a lot of the other teams that kind of I want to see how both the committee of media that vote and the coaches do with teams that did well last year in the kind of abbreviated season, depending on what conference you played in. You see Coastal Carolina and Louisiana both still getting some love. Right. Even a team like Penn State, who didn't play well last year, but had a pretty good recruiting class. Once again, they find themselves in the top 20. Teams like Auburn did not, but you kind of understand the reasoning why. Teams like Indiana, who had a really good year last year.
Came out of nowhere.
Exactly. They expect them to kind of take a back seat. Do you think, as far as the first polls go, and obviously you can't take these with a grain of salt, do you think overall they got these positions right, or do you expect to see a mass overhaul of where these teams are ranked maybe come third week of the season?
There's going to be one or two teams that people thought were going to be big in their conference or achieve, not just overachieve, but achieve. I think Indiana and Iowa State are in the same boat, or teams that you generally don't expect anything from. Right. Last year they kind of jumped up in a COVID year, though, so we don't really know. There were a lot of guys out. There were a lot of guys that were uncomfortable trying to deal with the situation. I thought that for once the attention wasn't on so much college football and talking about the situation every week. It was more of who's going to be out, what kind of situation is COVID going to wreak on our conference, how many games are going to be canceled. All these other things were kind of you had to worry about last year. This year it's kind of getting back to football. A team I pay some attention to. I love Herm Edwards. Yeah. Okay. A guy I got to know very well at ESPN, one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. I thought he was a little overmatched in the pros because he was a nightmare on time management, but his skills with people are very good. Right. And I think he's perfect for college. I think he's just getting his kind of getting used to how to recruit and all that. I think he's going to be kind of like what Pete Carroll was at USC with Arizona State. If he stays there, he might go somewhere else where he'll be bigger time. But what a great guy, and I think he's perfect for college football. LSU, like we were talking about, the SEC West, you have Texas A&M, you have LSU, you have Ole Miss, you have Auburn, and then even Mississippi State and Arkansas, all teams that I think can be good. Definitely LSU is more of a known, and so is Texas A&M. And Ole Miss, there's still questions about, but you'd probably have to put them in more of a known category. So it's going to be interesting to see if LSU can be consistent enough to beat those other teams and get to second and maybe challenge Alabama, because they have to go to Alabama this year. And Alabama remembers losing to them 2 years ago.
Exactly. Ole Miss is a team that you bring up, not in the poll, and so I wonder if that's more fuel to the fire over there in Rebel Country over there in Oxford. I know that Lane will be using that as bulletin board material. Meanwhile, we already know what the FCS as far as the AP poll is. However, the coaches poll is also out today. We always like to take a look at this because a team that resides in the East Alabama community is in the FCS, and they come in at number 8. That's where Jacksonville State is ranked after that 10-3 season last year. No matter what poll that has come out so far, they're in the top 10. So it lets you know that, once again, expectations are really high for this ball club that has a really good team coming back, really good offensive player, really good defensive player back in the scene this year. And I expect a lot of big things from Jacksonville State, I'm sure, as do you and the coaches.
It'll be interesting to see how they do in that new conference. There's a lot of things to look forward to as far as Jacksonville State.
Exactly. Sam Houston is actually one of the teams on their schedule this year. We'll see how the Gamecocks do. FCS polls out right now. Preseason rank number 8 is Jacksonville State. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll talk more football in a bit, but we'll go to the baseball world first. The Atlanta Braves on a nice little run. Mark will break it all down coming up next.